everyone, I wanted to do a video, well I've actually done a video on the toad within witchcraft, and this is actually quite interesting. I actually made the video, however it was too large a file to actually download, upload onto YouTube. It was actually, the video was too big, because there is just such a lot of folklore and a lot of connotations and associations with the toad in general within witchcraft. So I'm basically going to try and cut this down a little bit more and see what we kind of have. It's weird, before doing this video, when I actually done it, I had a lot of people actually on my Facebook page as well, actually sort of talking to me and sort of mentioning the toad in general and the toad bone, right? And I found this really, really interesting. So first of all, let me say, by starting this video, there is a lot of stuff attached to the toad within witchcraft, and so I know more than likely that I am going to be missing stuff out, and I think, you know, so forgive me if I do miss out certain things. So let's actually look at the toad. For a start off, the toad is actually quite a shamanic creature. Now this is a creature that dwells neither in water nor in land. This is an indwelling creature. It has very, you know, it's a liminal creature. It's neither water nor land. And we know that within Celtic times, the Celts, the ancient Celts in particular, valued places where water and earth met, and they were seen as very sacred places. So automatically there's this very sort of deep connection to the toad as a very shamanic creature, as a very otherworldly creature. In a lot of cultures as well, toads and frogs were actually seen as fae. There are some there is some folklore that basically just says toads and frogs are fae, are just another form and variation of fae. They were also seen as messengers of the fae. So in regards to the toad, a common misconception is that a toad gives you warts. Toads do not give you warts, however there are a lot, and it's probably because of their warty appearance, their bumpy appearance. There's actually folk charms and spells that talk about giving your warts back to the toad, actually giving them to the toad. And so yeah, there's that transference magic there with the toad. Throughout history and folklore, the toad plays an important part in witchcraft, particularly in sort of early modern history. We see that there is this association with the toad and the devil was said to have as his coat of arms a crest of 3 toads on it, and the toad was associated heavily with the devil. In fact, in a lot of trials, it was said in the Sabbath, if the devil wasn't present, there would be an animal that would play the devil. There would be a goat, a cat, or a toad sat and seated with, you know, various sort of props and fancy costumes. In terms of ritual initiations as well, there are various witchcraft initiations where the devil is said to come as a toad and breathe power onto others and onto people. The toad was actually used within flying ointment as well, and there are a couple of records of this. The toad's skin contains bufotoxins, which is hallucinogenic, and was used a lot in flying ointment, and there are still people today that do flying ointment associated with toads. I know Sarah Lawless done a flying ointment that looked amazing, but it was a toad one and contained toad skins in there. Now, traditionally, the toad, in some accounts of flying ointment, is force-fed the host, which is the Holy Communion wafer of the Catholic Mass. The toad is then burnt, and its ashes are then used in flying ointment, or also in other charms. In very old charms to destroy the land, which I find is quite cute, but a toad is given a mini plough, and then bewitched, and then the witch sets the toad among the crop field, so that the toad will destroy the crops. So another thing is the toad plays an important part as the witch's familiar, and I'm sure that you guys have seen that old wood carving of a witch feeding from a chest 3 or 4 toads, I think it is, but her familiar spirits as toads. Even until the late 1920s, there are records in the Museum of Witchcraft of toads or frog spirits, one known as Ben, which was a toad spirit familiar of a witch called Sarah Noakes in Crewkerne. There are also links to the toad as a familiar spirit, and this happens a lot within sort of folk tales and folk magic tales that that basically a family would have a run of bad luck. There would be this big ass ugly toad that would appear on their doorstep and just linger for days, and so they would get the toad and kill the toad, and they would then find out that the suspected witch had also passed too. So there was that association with the toad, familiar spirit, and the witch as being very interlinked with the majority of familiar spirits within folklore. The toad, I'm really sorry if I'm speaking fast, I'm just trying to get all this information in. The toad's body parts can also be used as well. The legs in particular and the feet of the toads can be used to represent a connection with the other world, because it has that otherworldly associations, because it crawls through marshes and caverns and dark places, and its indwelling is very, very liminal. Now, the toad is said to have a special stone within its head, which is said to be toadstone, which, when worn in a ring, is said to change colour when poisons are near. There's also not just this, there's the toadstone can actually be put in water, and the water can then be used within healing rituals in order to heal somebody. And again, not just this, there's a very, very famous rite within East Anglia that was meant to be secret, and a folklorist, I believe, in the late 1800s, forgive me, his name's run off the top of my head, I've got my little list and everything I've wrote down, but forgot to write that down. And he recorded a rite known as the Toad-Bone Rite. And the Toad-Bone Rite, basically, you had a toad, a live toad, and the toad would then be impaled or crucified on a blackthorn bush. It would then be left there to slowly die. Once dead, the toad would be taken off the blackthorn tree and then put upon a mound, or an ant's hill, and the ants would strip the flesh and would strip the toad clean. The charmer or the witch or the practitioner would then come up to the bones, grasp the bones, and then go to a flowing river and drop the bones down. And it is said that nature is said to turn against you when this is happening. The trees will whip you, the wind will howl, there will be rain, and you would know of the toad bone as it goes down the stream because it will screech. In other variations, it is the first bone that pulls you, you grab that quick. However, the ritual isn't over then. It involves taking the toad bone to a graveyard the following night, and the witch will then be there and wait for the devil. And the devil is said to come, and you are said to have a battle with the devil. And if you can trick the devil, and if you can get the bone, then awesome. However, if you don't, then you're screwed. In some variations, you should try again. However, even with dropping the bone into the flowing river, there's this association within it that if you don't get that bone, then you're fucked. Excuse my French. There's no other way I could put that. And the whole idea of this is that the toad bone is said, whoever bears the toad bone is said to have control and dominion over spirits. Not only that, but the person becomes a toad witch. And the person then has control over people and animals. In particular, has the power to horse whisper and is then known as a horse whisperer. Even in modern England, there are still tales of people actually being toadmen. It's still heard about, not as much within the younger community, but particularly within the older community, that is still going on. That is still a thing. A man named Andrew Chumley, who was one of the founders of the sabbatic craft, he actually researched and read up upon the toad bone rite. And he published the Grimoire of the Golden Toad, and I've flicked through a bit, and the main part I looked through was the toad bone rite, and he done his variation upon the toad bone rite. And what's interesting is there are a lot of rumours going around. I've been having a look as to see whether or not this is true. However, there are a lot of rumours going around saying that after he completed the ritual 2 weeks after he died of a heart attack. Now, whether or not this is true, I don't know, but I feel that this should be perhaps taken as an example to realise and recognise this isn't a rite that you just do. This is something that even people 20 plus years experience go, because it is a grisly ritual. It's a very grisly rite, and it's very powerful, and it's very dangerous. And there is, within folklore, if you mess up, that's it. That is, you're screwed. However, as I said, some variations you just try again, but there is this very, this isn't a light-hearted ritual. This is very intense and very, very grisly and very sacrificial, this ritual. Now, the toad you would use for that would be the natterjack or nutterjack toad. No, natterjack toad. However, they are, they are nearly extinct. So please, be wary about this. And I want to take this opportunity to say that I don't endorse or, actively encourage animal cruelty within witchcraft. I'm just merely explaining the folkloric associations and the old witch links to the toad. So, to finish off, drop my book. To finish off, I'm going to read a little bit from this book, Call of the Horned Piper by Nigel Aldcroft Jackson. A short disquisition concerning toad lore. The totemic significance of the toad in witchcraft is primarily due to its intimacy with the subterranean marshes, caves and dark waters of Anwin. Thus the toad is a dweller in the fens of the underworld and is especially holy to the chthonic divinities. The toad is equally at home in the realm, in the water or in solid land, passing at will from one realm to the other, just as the witch shaman crosses the boundaries between this world and the underworld. The toad, therefore, is a shamanic creature considered symbolically, who epitomises passage between the dimensions. In this respect, it should be remembered that in the Celtic worldview, marshy pools and lins were entrance points to the lower world, the great below. At the initiation of Basque witches, new devotees were marked by the devil or horned god with the sign of the toad or toad's foot. In medieval lore, the heraldic crest of the toad was held to consist of 3 toads emblazoned on a shield, affirming the link with the powers of the netherworld. A toad hopping over a person's foot is an ominous sign of impending death. An old Mantuan name for the toad is Fada or fairy, emphasising its otherworldly nature. In the Pyrenees, it is said that witches could be recognised by an image of a frog's foot in their left eye. Also as well, in Essex, a witch in 1582 was held to own 2 spirits like toads, the one called Tom and the other Robin, which she had inherited from her mother. Sorry, I was originally born in Essex, so I just thought I'd put a little bit of Essex witch lore out there as well. So yes, that's my video on the toad. Again, also the Cornish have their own sort of variation of the toad bone rite, but it's not that at all, and it's a very secretive thing that has still been kept secret and still wants to remain that way. So there is very little we know about that. But yes, over and out, and yes, hopefully I've put a lot of information out there on toads within witchcraft, and I hope to cover a couple of more particular interesting animals that draw well to me, and their significance within the crooked path. Over and out, and toad out.